Welcome to another episode of the Limitless Life podcast. I am your host, Kyle Smith, and joining with me today is Konn Lavery, right?
That's right, Konn
Excellent.
Lavery.
Who
Yeah,
is a Canadian horror and dark fantasy writer who is known for his Mental Damnation series. The second book, Dream, reached the Edmonton Journal's top 5 selling fictional books list. He started writing fantasy stories at a very young age while being homeschooled. It wasn't until graduating college that he became professionally pursuing his work with his first release, Reality. Since then, he has continued to write works of fiction ranging from fantasy to horror. His literary work is done in the long hours of the night. By day, Konn runs his own graphic design and website development business under the title Reveal Design. These skills has been transcribed into the formatting and artwork found within his publications, supporting his fascination of transmedia storytelling. Konn, my man,
Hi,
welcome.
thank you. Glad to be here.
Fantastic having you here. So, my friend, you are an author, right?
Yes.
Uh,
Yep.
so a question that I was kind of pondering when I was going for a walk is what inspired you to become that author?
Ooh, it goes way back to when I was like a little kid. So I've been like writing forever. Not very good stuff at the beginning. Like when I was 8 years old, I was writing stories for a board game I was working on, and it was like this strategy board game with a grid. And ultimately I just got more interested in telling the stories, and I had tried different mediums all throughout my life. And like video games I think would be the first inspiration, and then books, kind of like the Redwall novel. But yeah, I tried different mediums. Like I played around with cartoons with Adobe Flash or Macromedia Flash, and then I tried some role-playing games, like making modules for like Neverwinter Nights. And I got way more interested in telling the stories rather than the mechanics of the art form. I even tried like comics in high school, and I just wanted to tell really good stories. So books really fit that because you can just drill into stuff on and on. So yeah, I just kept writing my whole life, but I didn't start professionally pursuing it until like 2011, and then the first book came out in 2012. It actually, because I wrote that Mental Damnation series in high school, and a friend of mine, she looked at it while I was in college and was like, "This is actually, you got something here. You should pick it up again." Because I dropped the whole writing thing for a few years, and then her encouragement, kind of like gave me the push I needed, and I had the graphic design skills from college. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I can do something with this. And that would have been 2010, or 2009, when like self-publishing was just starting to come out. So I was like, yeah, maybe I can take a shot at this on my own. And here we are today.
That's pretty sweet. So, what are some of your inspirations? Because you definitely have a very dark sense of writing.
Yep.
So, I'm just curious about your inspirations and why, what, how is it? Yeah. What are your inspirations?
Inspiration.
Yeah.
It's gonna sound super cliche, but I'm inspired by life. Like it's everything you do. Like you can read the news, you can go on the internet, you can take a walk, like everything can and just kind of gets absorbed into your head, and you don't know how it's gonna come out in the writing, but it does. But you might hear something that, or hear a conversation on the bus, like, yeah, that might be kind of a neat idea for a story. For the actual like author career, I've really been inspired by a lot of musicians, other authors, like everyone usually inspired by Stephen King, H.P. Lovecraft. Those are kind of go-tos for the horror. And then oddly enough, I like how musicians do DIY stuff, and it was a lot more common for musicians to do it before the rise of self-publishing. So I was always impressed by bands like Cell Dweller or Nine Inch Nails, or even KMFDM, how they just went and did their own thing, and that I found that really cool.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So so it was your friend that encouraged you to pursue the writing, correct? Because I was gonna ask
Yes.
like how that goes. So in that moment, like, did you know an inkling that you're like, you know what, maybe I do got something? Like, what
Yeah.
inspired you to get her to read it?
It was actually just a conversation because oh wait, I think I was teaching at the college at this point. Memory's a little fuzzy. Either way, I was at the college and she worked as the secretary at the front. So we were just kind of chit-chatting between classes, and I think we were just talking about hobbies and stuff we used to do, and I just, no big deal, just like name drop. I was like, yeah, I wrote a book in high school, and she's like, what? And I didn't think of anything of it, but I was like, yeah, I did. So she wanted to read it, and she's a she's a funny lady. She read it, and then she was reading it and then had to put it in her freezer because she just got it too scared of it, and it's like, no, I need to take a break, and anything bad in that I'm just gonna let freeze it, and then when I'm ready to read it. So that was actually kind of the encouraging thing, hearing her have that kind of a reaction to the writing. And I've always wanted to write, and it's kind of a long game thing where I think I'm just forever going to be writing whether I like it or not. It's almost kind of a fixation. So uh being able to get people to validate it was kind of a thing, be like, oh, so I can write for me, but then once I've revised and finished the stories, I can give it to the rest of the world to enjoy.
That's pretty cool. I was listening to the Andrew Huberman podcast, and Rick Rubin was on there, and his book is really good. I really enjoy his book. It's called The Creative Act, The Art of
Oh,
Being.
nice.
And something he talks about is, or a philosophy that I've adopted that I was inspired by from the book, is that the medium does not matter. Creativity and art stirs emotions.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And yeah, I agree with that, because that should be every artist of any medium. That should kind of be their base point, is to stir something up. Because I think that's really important. Otherwise, you're just kind of making, there doesn't seem to be much of a point.
Yeah, there's no intention behind it, so it's just hollow.
Yeah, yeah, like AI art.
Yeah, yeah. But damn, it looks cool.
It looks
Oh,
cool, but man, it's hollow.
totally, totally. It's so crazy, so crazy. So when it comes to books, where do you find, obviously walking around, but can you think of some prominent times that like you're just like, oh shit, I'm gonna write a freaking story. Oh yeah, you can swear. A fucking story around this one specific moment. Do you have a moment that kind of pops out to your mind
Um,
where it's almost like a moment of enlightenment and you're just like, shit, I just wrote a whole book in like 30 seconds.
yeah, no, I get those frequently, whether I'm like exercising or at the bar, showering, anything really. Like, I think I had one fairly recently. I'm kind of working on, it's just kind of basic rough story for now, but it's, yeah, I had that idea now living by the in Vancouver, so it's like I see the ocean, I see all the freight ships, and they have all these sea cans that are literally bringing in all the consumer goods to North America. So I'm at the edge of North America and seeing this stuff happen, like, yeah, I should write a good horror story about being on one of those ships. So
That would
that
be
was,
really cool.
yeah. So that's kind of something I've been playing with, my current work in progress. And I'd say that'd be the latest kind of aha moment, and pieced it all together and got the beginning, middle, and end basically figured out. And now just got to type out the words.
That's pretty cool. So, do you find the process of visualizing and like conceptualizing that thought and to the point of finished product where people are purchasing, what's that process like for you?
Oh, it varies drastically. I would say with any sort of creative project, with like writing or design or even like music or drawing. I learned a very solid method from college where it was all about design. And first is basically knowing the scope of the project, which is what the end result should be. With design, and then it's like budget and timeline. So knowing those and then starting from the beginning is kind of the idea brainstorming part. If with design you're doing thumb sketches, with writing a book, I found I more so do a lot more research and um, brainstorming premises. So I'll write like quick one sentences to describe what the book could be about. Researching helps to see, like with the CCAN thing, for example, learning about how long does it take these boats to travel across the ocean, what all that kind of stuff, how scuba diving, like how deep can someone dive. And as you start generating these ideas, not all of them work and you scrap them. That's kind of the point. Then you drill down to find the good ones. And yeah, then you get into that production phase where it's just about the hours you put into it, whether it's typing or designing the logo and yeah, using your hand essentially to do that. So yeah, that's kind of the whole process. It sounds very rigid because it kind of is, but it's just kind of like trust the process. It'll always work. Sometimes you get a freebie and you dream about something super rad, and then you're like, all right, I don't have to work. I just can do this.
Yeah, I like that. A freebie where it's just like, oh shit,
Yeah,
that's
those
pretty
are
cool.
great. It's yeah, like the eureka moment you mentioned. It's kind of like nice. But if you don't have an idea, like as a creative professional, you basically it's your job to be creative. So you got to come up with stuff on the spot. And that's where that process of elimination really works, where you start with a bunch of broad, simple ideas, whether it's some thumb sketches or one sentence premises of a story, and you just find the one.
That's pretty sweet. I think the process. I think a lot of folks are really dialed in on their craft, know the processes, like knows the things that like give her, and it and every endeavor that I've ever like chatted with someone, it always starts with the global and then it breaks it down into the smaller chunks, and it's just because it's like you break it up into the middle, beginning, and the end, right? You just have like all the
Yes.
fillers in between, and then it just depends on that. Because something writing is something that I'm going to be working on this year. I haven't done
Nice.
much at all in the last little bit, but I have the intention, so at least I'm on the
Nice.
right direction. Uh
No pun intended.
yeah, right. So when it comes to the process itself, do you find like well, I guess you already mentioned that walking or and just when you're busy doing things then ideas come up. Do you find that there is moments where nothing is coming to you, and what do you do in those really like you're on a dry spell of ideas?
Oh yeah. Different methods for the medium I'm working on. For writing, I find just typing things down helps you get past that. And putting it in your head like, okay, obviously these first couple paragraphs are going to get deleted later. So I can just type whatever I want, and that kind of gets the wheels turning again. Kind of like when drawing or designing something, you just start drawing swirls or something, so you get that motion and your brain starts to remember how to work again. And I find that helps with any sort of creative block. It's just to get the brain where it needs to be rather than it getting stuck in. Usually I found those blocks happen when you've got this kind of editor hat on and you think what you're going to make has to be perfect from the get-go. It's like, no, get messy, make that first thing a complete disaster. Fix it later. As long as you have it, you got something to work with.
And then the rest of it's just chipping away.
Yep.
I think that was a good lesson for me today. That was good.
Hey.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Yeah.
Nice.
Get my
Yeah.
Zevia. I have a little bevy too, you know. Woo! That's super
Yeah, that
cool.
oh it is.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much. That was very enlightening, actually. That
You're
was
welcome.
really good. Because it's actually funny because I've been really enjoying making reels, like just editing reels and
Nice.
stuff like that. It's just been fun. And
Yeah.
I've been viewing it as a creative outlet. So I haven't been looking at it as so much of a chore. Like when I get
Yeah.
it in there, I'm just like, doo, 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 doo. It's cool. And I'm doing it on my
Yeah.
phone and it just works for work as well, right?
Yeah.
And something I think is really cool with the creativity side of just like coming up with something. I kind of forgot how it actually tied into what you were saying before. but but something I think is really fun about the creativity is, oh, when it comes to editing, there we go. Now I'm back on
Yeah.
track. So when it comes to editing specific, I actually say to myself, it's better to have, or I heard someone else say it, I think, and it said, it's better to have more footage than less footage because you can't
Yes.
add more footage.
Yeah.
kind of
Yep.
thing. And I was like,
Very much.
oh, that's a good lesson. So now
Oh
it's
yeah.
the same thing. Okay, now I'm actually just going to change the medium, same belief.
Yes. Oh
Nice.
yeah. Yeah, very much. Like, have a bunch of ideas, because then you'll see the ones that work and the ones that don't work, and they're equally as important, because when you see something that really doesn't work, it's like, okay, now I know exactly where this shouldn't go.
Nice. How much does ego impact your writing? So yeah, let's go with that. I think that's a cool
That's
question.
a good one. I think it's one of those things that kind of creeps into everyone's life, no matter what they think of themselves. And yeah, it totally has in ways I haven't thought, like, because the ego is such a mutating concept that's
Mm,
with you forever. Unless you can, like, disappear in the mountains and live in a cave, you're never going to get rid of it. Even then, you're probably going to still deal with it. So, I've dealt with it in all forms of phases of my writing. Like when I was mentioning external validation, then I'd submit to a bunch of awards to see if, like, my writing was any good, and I think that comes from a lot of insecurity, and that was the ego, was just constantly not thinking it was good enough. And I think it's relaxed a lot more. Maybe it's it's a little more cocky now, in the sense that it's confidence, where it's like, I know I can do this. So I think mostly, yeah, it's always the ego you're trying to battle with. In terms of the actual writing style, I don't think it comes off too much. It's good to have confidence in your words, and being bold, and then it's surprising to see how much better that affects your writing, because a lot of especially with writing, when someone's new to it, they tend to beat around the bush, like vague booking, making a post and be like, something exciting's coming. And writers have a bad habit of doing that, because they're shy and insecure with their words, and they don't want to give things away. But the more you write, you learn to be bold, and it's like, great, that keeps readers engaged.
damn, that was a good answer, dude. Shit. Okay, you just dropped a good little knowledge bomb on that one too, man.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, the ego's it's a tough thing that we always deal with. Yeah, and it's I think staying trying to stay open to it is what a healthy mechanism, just knowing it's always going to be there, and um things will affect you personally, and that is the ego getting hit,
Totally.
whatever it might be. And I think a little bit of ego is a healthy thing as a human being. It makes you real. Hey,
I
kitty.
completely agree with that. Oh, the kitty's
Yeah.
there now?
Yeah,
Nice.
she's got thoughts.
Yeah,
That's her ego.
nice. I think it's so interesting because like what you're describing. So you're an advanced writer. I think this is pretty cool. Just neat little thought. But you're an advanced writer. I would consider myself less than beginner. I didn't even put on the white belt yet. I would not consider myself there yet. I
Yeah.
have the systems. I actually have a system before I have any content, but I'm like,
Yeah.
I like my systems. Just need to execute now.
Yeah.
But I think something that's so cool as a beginner, listening to you talk about that as a writing way, it's competent confidence. It's not arrogant confidence,
Yeah.
and it's neat just hearing that the ego is always going to be there. And I think in any endeavor, like the ego is always going to be there. Just like I find that we got to make peace and have conversations with the ego rather than let it rule us. And
Yeah.
it just becomes like really like nasty if we just listen to the shitty talk because we wouldn't do much,
No, no, we
right?
wouldn't. Or you try to suppress it all the time, and then you do the opposite of the ego, and usually that's like being overly passive or not doing anything, and that's not good either.
Yeah, and then you just perpetuate that same problem. You're just like, "Ugh," or whatever
Yeah.
reasons. It's either you think you're too good or you don't think you're good enough. There's
Yep.
not a good balance of the two.
No, and it's dangerous when you think you're too good, because, like, you can topple into that arrogance section you were just saying, where it's like, yeah, you got confidence in your stuff, and then you just kind of put on these blinders where you're like, oh, I know how to do this, I know that, and then you just stop essentially learning and growing, because you think you know everything, and then you're stuck.
Crazy. I think that's why I think it's very important. I would consider myself lucky in this particular situation because I just like talking to strangers, and that's how we met. I was
Yeah.
walking Bella, and Lindsay liked Bella, and I
Yep.
just started chatting with both of you, and here
Yeah.
we are now.
Yeah, it worked
So
out great.
yeah, it's pretty decent, man. It's pretty decent. So with chatting with a bunch of people that I think are doing like really cool things, I found myself just more curious about how to do things in my own way as well. Like I'm like an accumulation of a bunch of really neat, cool people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
I keep that frame, and I think it's neat just hearing different perspectives or being able to just take little tidbits of knowledge and just accumulate. I think that like having that kind of crew has helped me mitigate my ego flare ups.
Yeah. Oh, it does, because you get different perspectives because everyone's in their own, essentially their own world. And if you've got, if you hang out with like a diverse group of people, you get to see things that you'd and hear about things you would have never thought about before.
Totally. So I want to talk about your latest book because you had a cool point on it, or your second latest book. You have a
Yes.
later book.
Yes.
So I want to talk about the one that you're recently doing it because you said it was a choose your own adventure book, and that's
Yeah.
very intriguing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, this one here, the Beyond the Macrocosm. It's interactive short stories of dread and wonder. And it's a really fun little collection that I put together where the short stories were written over the span of 2 years, some of them previously published in anthologies, some of them on my Patreon, and then some of them just free on the blog, and put them all together with an overarching story where it's told in the second person. And second person perspective is you, the reader, so you're actually in the book, and that's what a lot of these choose your own path stories are like, where it's you're the character running through and making the choices. So you're with this kind of ghoulish character trying to save the universe, and you gotta go through these short stories to find the clues and break the riddle. And if you break the riddle, you make it to the end of the book. But if you don't, you go back to the beginning and you have to find the new paths to try and collect the clues.
Oh shit. Okay, that's pretty cool. What inspired
Yeah.
that? Why'd you want to do that?
I've been wanting to write kind of an interactive book for a long, long time. So I figured I should do it at some point, and I thought it'd be a fun challenge to put it in with short stories, because usually with interactive fiction, it's like one story, and that's what you get. But with this, you get to read little short stories in between the main plot. And yeah, I thought I'd put it together. I don't know if I'll do another one. Um, Maybe we'll see where the future goes.
That's pretty cool. And your recent one was before that is Rave, correct?
Rave, yeah, that was a slasher horror that takes place in Prince George, and it was a lot of fun to write because it takes a lot of inspiration from the underground music scene where I had a lot of involvement in. And yeah, the characters are, like you're saying before, you're an accumulation of everyone you meet. So like unintentionally, these characters are just blobs of everyone I've ever met, plus my own creativity of stuff. So a lot of I took liberty of making them however I want, doing crazy things. So it's not like, oh, that's your friend from high school, isn't it? It's like, no, 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 it's not. Just coincidence.
Yeah. Disclaimers in the front. All the names have been changed.
Oh, I do have a disclaimer on my books. Like at the beginning,
Nice.
it's like this is all fiction, and if it's a coincidence, if it's unless it's like directly something, but it's a coincidence that it lines up, and it's not meant to be harm. It's just fiction. So, because yeah, I get that question all the time. People are like, "Oh, is this character like your ex-girlfriend, or is this something like?" No, it's just fiction. That's all it is. Just sounded like a good idea.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, don't want there's a movie I believe that is something similar. I don't think it's the one with Johnny Depp, but there is a movie where someone is a writer, the main character is a writer, and he's writing things that are a little bit too close to home. And so he
Yeah.
starts getting investigated as one of the people because he knows so much information.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I'm
I don't
pretty
remember the
sure.
movie.
I'm pretty sure that's a movie at least. I don't think I came up with that. So
Well, there's also true versions, and I'm not going to remember the book's name, but it was in Japan. This lady basically wrote these murder mysteries, or wrote a murder mystery book, and it's actually how she killed her husband. So to get really dark, yeah, that's you can look it up and
that's
probably
so
just type in
crazy.
like Japan author murdered husband true story, and you'll find it. And she got arrested because she basically wrote and told everyone how she did it and just changed the names. And it's like, oh boy.
Oh my goodness. That's just the way that you want to go. You're like, I know I'm going to get caught. This is how I want it to be as a
Yeah.
best-selling author.
Yeah, it's insane. And obviously the book's unpublished now, but you can find used copies apparently, and it's written in Japanese, so like I don't know how to read it, but no
Yeah, me
interest
neither.
either actually.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
not.
want that'd be freaky. I feel like that
Yeah.
would be like a cursed book.
Oh yeah, yeah, like and personally I'm, despite writing horror, I'm pretty sensitized to horror. I used to like it as a teen, like real gore and stuff, but as I've gotten older, I'm quite soft. I don't want to see that or hear any of that stuff.
Well, I think it's a good thing to be selective of your input
Yep.
because our input's going to affect our output too. So if you have those just like stimuli where you're just like getting in there, it's just going to stay locked in.
Yeah.
And then when it's locked in, then you're just like you're
Oh
just
yeah,
freaking
your
out, you
brain's
know? Yeah.
constantly like just seeing like everyone is evil. The nice neighbor who's an old man with flowers, he's obviously a serial killer.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah, it's so crazy. It's so interesting. It's kind of like yeah, it's like it kind of reminds me of just because it's an interesting contrast, but there's a lot of metal singers that are opera singers or trained opera singers.
That makes sense.
So
Yeah.
like Disturbed,
Yeah.
and they have
Didn't
Eddie
know
as
the
the
opera.
mascot.
Huh. Didn't know that.
Why can't I remember the other band? Anyways, it's right there, but there's a lot of metal singers that are opera singers. And I think it's just
Yeah.
because
Huh.
it's like, well, if you think of like, whoa, like everything they're doing is like, it's very, if it's not trained, then your vocals are just going to be shredded apart.
Yes. Yeah. And
And
there's a theatrical component to metal.
totally. Yeah, exactly. Just
Yeah.
look at like so many, there's so many bands that are just
Oh
like
yeah.
a thing, like
Yeah. And
Guar.
yeah. Yeah. That's pure theater.
Yeah,
It's fun.
that's absolutely. So what do you have planned for the next chunk of time? Are you working on more books? Obviously working on more books. Do you have any kind of like goals for books?
Yeah,
Or
yeah. It's always writing. I try to write at least 5 or 6 days of the week. But I've got a new one coming out this year. I'm hoping for the spring, like June, maybe May. But it's basically a dark urban fantasy that's gonna act as the flagship for all my writing, like that Beyond the Macrocosm interactive short story collection is part of the same universe, and all of my work from like the Mental Damnation series to Rave to everything else is under the same universe, and it's something I've been building towards since I was a little kid, making those board games. And I always just thought it was a cool idea to have a super universe where everything happens in the same timeline, so you can have characters appear in different books. And this new one that I'm working on kind of, yeah, combines all of those. So you've got some of the fantasy elements, you've got some of the gritty horror elements, and it's got revenge. Follows a character from a previous book, and she's basically hell bent on getting revenge on these gangsters that turns out to be reptilian drug lords. And she teams up with like a nymph who's the last of his kind from the fantasy world that you learn what happened to it. So it's, yeah, kind of a thriller, but dark urban fantasy. And yeah, I'm aiming for that one to come out in the spring. Just it's in the hands with beta readers right now, and then the editor, and then I plan the launch.
do you have a title for it yet? Or did you already say it?
The title,
If you want to share, if you want to
yeah,
share, because it's
yeah,
probably going to be out before you even launch it. So
that's true. Yeah, I'm leaning toward. I've been doing market research for it, and I'm actually going to have a voting ballot in my newsletter this month. But the title I'm leaning towards is Crystal Moth Conspiracy, Ashbourne Book One.
ooh,
Yeah.
that's gonna be cool. I'm stoked for your box set.
Yeah. I'll have to make one.
Yeah, that's super, super cool, man.
Yeah.
So how much carryover, I guess it's kind of storytelling, but how much carryover does graphic design have with writing? Is it still kind of the same creativity muscles because it's still your art? Is it kind of how it goes?
Yeah, the design, what I do for the design business and the books is usually quite different. Sometimes I get authors and bands that hire me to do album art or cover art for books or interior formatting for the books, and then the two are like very married. But the usual work tends to be more on the corporate side, so like branding, logos, trade show displays, business cards, websites. So that's where a lot of the work comes from. But when I'm doing design for the book stuff, I get to have a lot of fun since that is quite familiar. The material is very familiar to me, so treating myself as a client is super easy. I know the stories. I can do market research and figure out the genres and what covers will work best for it. And I also get to experiment a little bit more with my photo illustration work as well. And photo illustrations essentially where you take photographs and you paint on top of them, and that's a method I've been using since 2018. It's really fun because you can source a bunch of photographs. You can even take your own photos and you print them all out, and then you can basically cut out the pieces you want and glue it onto a canvas and paint away, and then it creates a really cool surreal effect. Yeah, so I get to use a lot of that with my writing too, which I don't use very much with the corporate design work because they don't need photo illustrations.
Were you always like, or actually, did you have a lot of creative influences as a kid?
Oddly, no. I learned a lot of business sense from my dad because he was a salesman, old school style, where like in the 90s you had to like knock on doors.
Nice.
And they called them salesmen, not account managers. So yeah, here's the real deal. I learned a lot from him. My mom was super or is super great because she uh basically let me be creative. She would encourage it all the time. So I guess she would be the inspiration or for that because I'd want to paint, so she would help me get paint. Wanted to sculpt and play with clay, so we'd go shopping for clay, and I didn't have like endless budget, obviously. She didn't just let me go crazy. But she would encourage it as best as she could. So yeah, that I think let my imagination kind of do what it wanted. And my brother helped me a lot too with like um figuring out how to get computers working. So that's what led me into playing with Macromedia Flash and then eventually the other design software. So yeah, I think my immediate family would have to be not like that they're creative types, but they were always encouraging and offered help where they could.
I think that's really important with the support. The support's really
Yeah.
cool because it helps foster that creativity, even if there's no like fostering creativity or supporting someone in like an endeavor that they want to just try. I
Yeah.
think just being like, yeah, give it a go.
Yeah.
I think that there should just be more people encouraging, like, as long as it's within reason.
Yeah.
I think most people just need a little extra support, and I think that's a perfect example of the
Yeah.
contribution of support.
Oh, it is. And yeah, I think people do just generally need that little push. You see it all the time. Like someone will they're shy about their idea or that they don't know where to go with it, and you just give them a little push, and oh, sometimes they'll just keep going, and that's the coolest thing to see.
And you just get, yeah, it's really exciting. And it's like, oh, because you contributed to it too.
Yeah.
Because it was
Yeah.
like, it's like the pay it forward. Like your parents did it with you, and then so on and so forth. And then most of my experiences, or most of the way that I am right now, is because of those little bits of encouragement where I'm a coach because I had a good experience with a coach and I wanted to support other people in their kind of thing. And
Yeah.
now as I've just gotten older, that support has just expanded further outwards to like various things. So if I heard someone wanting to try something, even if it's like, hey, I kind of want to do YouTube, it's like, you know
Yeah.
what? Try it. What's the
Yeah.
worst that can happen? Like, fuck, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not gonna, I mean, highly unlikely you'll get sued and you won't lose your house unless you do something completely wrong. But yeah, like, and with your coaching, you've managed to do, like, I bet you've passed on what that your coach had done for you that got you into coaching. You probably inspired people too. Like, you're like, oh yeah, Kyle was great. Now I'm feel so much like better, and they, yeah, better as a person because they probably improved their methods and lifestyle.
Totally. Another person that I'm going to have on the podcast is Andrea Trouton, who was my
Hmm.
very first client, who's
Oh,
also
cool.
now writing a book.
No way. There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I shot her a message. I was like, I got this crazy cool idea where we could, she'll send me like, if it, when she, if she wants to do it, where I'll get to read it, get to break things down. Cause she said that I'm a little part of it. So it's pretty cool.
Ah, very cool.
And so then I can have her before the book launches. So it's like a pre-book launch. And I was really inspired by the Andrew Huberman and Rick Rubin podcast, because
Nice.
Huberman got the book before it was released, got to ask questions and stuff about it. And I really like that idea. And it's just a really cool story too.
Yeah.
Because it's the
Oh,
same as
wow.
like and that was 10 years ago. She was a client 10 years ago.
Ooh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. It's neat. So who do you think in that particular case, who do you have someone where you provide you gave that support and you just watch them just freaking catapult?
Yeah, yeah. There's been a number of authors that I would meet at conventions, whether I'd be speaking at a panel, giving a presentation, or just having a booth and signing books. People would ask questions like anytime during those conventions, and yeah, I've seen them grow as authors, and that is super cool. And they've like won awards. They've improved their writing over time. And then way back when I used to teach at the design college, even seeing the students now, like, oh man, yeah, it would be over a decade ago. Yeah, seeing them 10 years on still like in the industry and doing stuff. And they, yeah, were loved my classes and found it really like inspiring and whatnot. So yeah, it's cool to see these people like pursue their dreams. And it's like, oh yeah, I played a part and I carried it on for them because people helped inspire me. And now I've returned the favor.
I think it's super cool, man.
Yeah.
So we're getting close. We're getting close to the top of the hour,
All
and
right.
I don't want to keep you too long. I know you got some food for your kitty coming up.
Yeah, she's still meowing.
Right? Uh, but I just wanted to acknowledge you, man. I would just want to say thank you very much for coming onto the podcast, for having a cool conversation. Every time I've ever seen you out in the wild, it was usually in the morning on the
Yeah.
promenade,
Yeah.
summertime. And every time that we've run into each other, it's always been an insightful conversation. And it's kind of cool because I would come back home and I would be like, oh, I ran to Konn out there.
Yeah.
How's he doing? I'm like, oh yeah, awesome. Blah, 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 blah. And we talk about some sort of like you're someone that if I would learn something that day, you would be the first person I would share it with because I'd see you out
Yeah.
and about.
Oh yeah, yeah. You
So
shared
I
great
just want to
stuff.
say, yeah, yeah, I'm working on it. Working on it. I'll get there. I'll get there. And then I'll send you my stuff so that you can check it out. And that'd be even
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just want to thank you very much for being a very cool person. You're well intentioned, you got a good heart, and you're just a fantastic person to chat with and to know. So thank you.
Oh, thanks, Kyle. Yeah, likewise. I'm really glad we met back in the pandemic and we managed to, yeah, keep in touch even after I moved.
That's true. So where can people find you?
They can find me on Amazon, on Google, Apple Books. social media, basically Konn Lavery, KONNLAVERY .com, KonnLavery.com will take you to my site. Or if you just Konn Lavery on Google, you'll find all sorts of results for my books, my design work. And yeah, subscribe to the newsletter on my site if you want to learn when this new dark urban fantasy book's coming out. And I also blog about other stuff on my site. So just find me on the internet. It's
That's
everywhere.
fantastic. So I like to end my podcast with two questions. I'm sure these questions will evolve as they go. I don't think I sent them to you in advance, so
I like surprises.
it's gonna be good. It's
Yeah.
gonna be good. So my first one, my friend, you're on your deathbed. Your books don't exist. Nothing content-wise exists. What lesson do you want to pass on?
Deathbed. Don't have books. Jeez, that's a good one. I think what lesson would I want to pass on? That's a real tough one. I would say like something really kind of cliche, but like live a life of quality. Because quite frankly, no one knows where we go after this. So we're here now, and don't try not to make any regrets, because that seems to be the common thing everyone says when on their deathbed is regret on certain things like family and friends and why they spent so much time working and not with their loved ones.
That's totally fair. That's a good lesson, man. And
Yeah.
I got another one. This is the final one, and I think it kind of ties into that. But how would you define living a limitless life? What does it take to live a limitless life?
Ooh, you know, that what it takes, I think, is perspective. Really short and sweet. Because you could have someone's limitless life might be, the yacht and $1 million mansion. Someone else's might be off the grid. Someone else's might be something humble, like just owning a small bungalow house and having no debt. So limitless is kind of your perspective on what you even want out of life. And I think that kind of goes back to that death question, is like live without regrets, and that as few as you can, and that would lead to your limitless life to do what you want.
That is a fantastic answer, dude. And for those of you listening, be sure to go check out Konn Lavery everywhere on the internet. And if you're listening to this on podcasts or a podcast app, be sure to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share it out to your stories and tag me at Warrior Body Kyle. That's my Instagram handle. And if you're on YouTube, be sure to like, subscribe, comment one of your favorite takeaways from this author extraordinaire. And outside of that, I hope your day treats you as good as you look.